Hi, welcome back to End Times Prophecy News Updates Audio Update. Carrie Geren Scoggins. Wanted to remind people of the last few years' track record of the Democratic Party prior to their going to the polls. Starting with the move across the nation of bringing in pagan idols onto government land, such as the Baphomet erected in New York, and some in various places across the nation, as well as the retaliation against the federal Supreme Court ruling upholding that at city council meetings, they're allowed to open with prayer, quote, even if it's Christian-oriented, the backlash being that of satanic groups trying to open invocations and prayers on government land at government meetings. Liberal Democrats angry and throwing a tantrum that their opposition has legal rights on government land as well. We see Baphomets going up on government land, yet we have them attacking law enforcement for putting in God We Trust on their police cars. So notice the double standard that they don't want freedom straight across the board, again, but only for their side. Again, Democrats, leftists, and atheists alike show that this was never an issue about separation of church and state, that it was more about the issue that they just hated Christianity and Judaism, and all the clinkering and clanging they made over the Ten Commandments debate, of the Ten Commandments being posted at the courthouse, yet they're just fine with a Baphomet or pagan god being erected on government land. Nowhere to be found was the Freedom from Religion Foundation nor the ACLU to show up to complain on behalf of the Christians that the New Agers and pagans and liberals have erected a Baphomet, a pagan god, up on government land, and that it might offend the Christians. It's always one-sided, and it always takes up for the non-Christians when it comes to the liberal Democrat agenda. And this shows again, just over the past couple of years, what we've seen prior to this coming election. And we've also seen Hillary's recent campaign promise to continue to support keeping abortion legal, possibly on taxpayer money, taxpayer-funded abortion, and abortion pills, as well as remembering over the last couple of years how the Democratic Party defended Planned Parenthood, of whom has been taking taxpayer money during the duration, caught selling baby body parts and trafficking human body parts from unborn babies across state lines. Democrat law enforcement, liberal Democrats at the top of the line, refusing to prosecute liberal Democrats and Planned Parenthood. If you're a Democrat in this nation, you can break the law and never be charged. However, if you're as unfortunate as the governor of Texas, a Republican, which commits nothing more than what should be considered a misdemeanor, and he's given 20 years for abuse of a public office. The NSA not charged when Snowden exposes that indeed it was abuse of a public office, violating the civil rights of the Tea Party, the Christians, and Republicans. And when sued, and if the liberal Democrats have not degraded the morality of this nation enough with the gay marriage agenda, passing gay marriage and making the push for it to get through the federal Supreme Court, though no gay gene had ever been found, and the American Medical Association had again stated in the DOMA hearings that there had never been found a gay gene to date, there were no clump of genes creating a homosexual, nor were there any epigenetic markers cutting on a gay gene, and that instead the new studies had found that there was no difference between heterosexual and homosexual men found in these new studies. Yet, we have gay marriage pushed down the American public's throat. going so far now as to want transgendered men in dresses and women's clothes, allowed to come into the women's restrooms. The bathroom bill, brought to you by the Democratic Party. Liberal Democrats at the universities fear for the students' safety and try to create some safe space for them from this imagined fear that a Republican is going to run up and quote their views, yet they don't care about a woman's privacy and safe space in the bathroom while their pants are down on the commode, that they don't want men coming into their restroom. And there's already been reported cases across the nation where women and young girls have already been violated. Everything from transgendered males videotaping women on the commode and selling the videos to young girls being sexually assaulted while in the bathroom. Thank the Democratic Party. As if this wacko leftist insanity is not enough, liberal Democrats have pushed through in New York and wish to across the United States bring into Common Core curriculum the lie that there is no true 100% male or female, and that there are now to be considered 31 different genders. No male and no female, but 31 different genders. This comes no science required, because there is no scientific basis for this. Yet they want this Democrat, liberal, leftist, pro-gay propaganda in the public school system. Do not believe Democrats are wanting freedom straight across the board in bringing in this pro-gay agenda into the public schools. They tried to pass bullying legislation on a state level to violate the Christian students' civil rights, criminalizing Christian students speaking their views, their biblical viewpoints concerning homosexuality, meaning that the Democrats wanted the Christian students arrested if they dare oppose the gay agenda verbally in the school system. And though this legislation was shot down because of the federal Supreme Court ruling upholding the Christian students' First Amendment rights while on government land, including also the federal Supreme Court ruling upholding our biblical core values, our legal right to adhere to biblical core values, and citing Romans chapter 1 and scriptures on homosexuality, specifically in the federal Supreme Court ruling, the Democrats still wanted to censor Christian students, making sure that only the Democrat liberal viewpoint was taught in the school system with no opposition. This again should show you attempts at censorship by Democrats, starting all the way back down into the elementary school level and on up through high school and into the universities, looking at the propaganda from the LGBT groups already permeating the school system with no opposing viewpoint. America needs to wake up and bring in that opposing viewpoint. It's supposed to be freedom straight across the board, not just for liberal Democrats. The legal right to oppose their viewpoint. Again, we see needless court battles where Christian students are having to defend themselves from liberal Democrat teachers taught lies from the Democrat Teachers Union that religion on government land and in the schools is no longer allowed, when the Supreme Court ruling plainly says, and other court precedents, that student-led is fully legal. Student-led Bible studies and their legal right to proselytize also upheld in the federal Supreme Court. Bringing up the case where the Washington student was arrested for sharing the gospel while at school on government land, and though it was expunged, thrown out due to false arrest, he had broken no law. It's the fact that Democrats will not give up in trying to censor Christians. They're fine with LGBT, gay and lesbian groups on campus, Gay Straight Alliance, One in Teen, the National Socialist Group, the Student Pagan Organization, popping up on campus, the National Atheist Groups. Yet, they want to violate the civil rights of the Christian students, of whom also have freedom of speech while on government land. In the last few years, we've also seen the Democratic Party's hate speech law overturned in the federal Supreme Court. That was akin to the Nazi good speak law, censoring Bible scriptures on homosexuality. That I've discussed in prior videos concerning the all-gay Nazi brown shirts, going house to house, having Bible burnings, and those that did not produce their Bible or Torah to be burned due to violations of this good speak law, claiming that it spoke against homosexuality, that these gay Nazi regiments would go in and arrest the Christians and Jews. And it's such mass arrests that they ended up putting them in concentration camps and detention centers due to the vast numbers. We saw this law overturned here in the United States, and yet you see Democrats still pushing as if the hate speech laws were active. Censorship, such as the fireman in Atlanta fired for speaking his religious beliefs concerning homosexuality on the job, violating the 1964 Civil Rights Act, giving religion-protected class status and protecting his civil rights on the job under Title VII, as well as the Houston mayor subpoenaing church sermons from 5 different churches in the Houston area on homosexuality with the false belief that she could have them arrested and prosecuted for preaching sermons on homosexuality from a biblical viewpoint, which does not condone homosexuality, violating the church's First Amendment rights, the biblical core values, federal Supreme Court ruling, and religious discrimination laws, 1964 Civil Rights Act, giving religion-protected class status under the law, and breaking every law in the book, and these federal laws trumping their state anti-discrimination law because federal trumps state. And though the EU and UN still retain their hate speech laws and laws stating that they can't speak against homosexuality or Islam, the federal Supreme Court in the United States has overturned these laws as marks of censorship and unconstitutional. So then we see Democrat Chuck Schumer, with support of Harry Reid, Hillary Clinton, and Nancy Pelosi, try to amend the First Amendment. So if they can't have the Christians arrested for hate speech, they want to just go ahead and amend the First Amendment and take away their right altogether. Hillary Clinton has gone so far as to state she thinks Christians should have their religious beliefs forcibly changed. And she was referring to their views on abortion and noting that the UN has, within the last few years, banned pro-life protesting. So censorship that is political as well as religious. Remembering when you get government money, you get government control. And now that Democrats have passed socialized medicine, they want abortion on taxpayer money, taxpayer-funded abortion, and then swoop in like a big socialist leftist government and censor their ability to speak against such. Typical Marxism. And when discussing the Obamacare, that Democrats cannot even admit it failed within its first year. And what do I mean by this? Within its first year, we have to borrow trillions of dollars in debt just to cover 1 year's cost. And remembering that many have been cut off health care due to having terminal illnesses such as HIV, when they claimed there would be no death panels, yet the high cost of Obamacare was so exaggerated that within the first year, they fell back on the death panels to wipe out excessive cost and spending. Within 2 to 3 years, the United States is having to, quote, raise the debt ceiling and to borrow more money just to make a minimum payment on what they already owed on Obamacare, just 2 to 3 years into this failed social program. And what they're not telling the American public, that they're forcing people to sign documents stating that after their demise, the state will be able to confiscate their property and their home, leaving their children with no inheritance. Obama created this in what was referred to as a, quote, recovery clause. This recovery clause is going to leave the poor far poorer than they were before. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Pardon the grammatical error, but this is a common statement, and it means something. When failed social programs not only bankrupt the nation, but they're going to hurt the very people that they were designed to help. This recovery clause will take the inheritance of their children and their children's children, leaving them in more poverty than they've ever seen before. I wish I had the record to share the information from Herman Cain, of whom spoke out against this recovery clause early on, as well as others who spoke out against the death panels and the outlandish cost that would be incurred due to Obamacare. And the liberal Democrats and the media censored it. And while I'm at it, I'd like to add that I'm glad that Herman Cain caught the individual that spread the lies about the so-called adultery, and there was an admission of guilt, and that his name was cleared, even though the liberal Democrat media refused to acknowledge such. How ironic that liberal Democrats refer to those who vote Democrat due to a so-called educated vote as an informed vote, yet it's liberal Democrat gays in our media. Now that we have an almost all-gay media across the United States, who will lie, cheat, and steal to take up for the Democratic Party and refuse to report both sides of the debate, dumb down the conservative side to the point that it's an insult, censor out the facts, and leave the American public blindsided. An informed vote is one that hears both sides of the debate. Unfortunately, we have Democrats such as Obama, who wanted to legislate wiping out all non-mainstream media. And fortunately, thanks to our First Amendment still being intact, and the liberal Democrats such as Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid and Hillary Clinton not being able to amend our First Amendment, but we still have freedom of the press and the legal right to oppose the Democratic Party's viewpoint, and we still have our First Amendment fully intact. It is my belief that we will see far more attempts by wacko leftists to steal our First Amendment, trying to amend it away, or trying to sign on to the UN global court system, where there will be no guarantee of a freedom of the press, freedom of religion, or freedom of speech, as the UN guarantees no such thing. And we will see more of liberal Democrats, abusive of public office, getting into law enforcement to harass the religious right Republicans and Tea Party. We have a battle on our hands that we're handing our children because our age group didn't stand up and do the right thing. It was status quo lamestream, letting them get by with abuse of a public office, so that we pass this on to our children to have to continue to fight for their civil rights as Christians and Republicans. Many want to get out and vote Republican in this election, mainly due to Trump stating he wants to undo NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, that Hillary bragged of writing in the early 1990s, which helped bankrupt the nation as years went by and we saw more and more businesses leave the United States going to Mexico to get around wage laws, labor laws, the EPA rules and regulations, and the Democrats' own union hijacked up wage demands. And then coming across the border tariff-free, taking jobs from the American public, and leaving us in the economic near collapse, and America teetering on the edge as we are at this point. Many want to see this undone, and they've heard Trump make the promise to help undo Hillary's NAFTA. And now that WikiLeaks has exposed Hillary took money under the guise of contributions and then passed laws for those people who contributed huge sums of money, and it was believed that she also did so in NAFTA, allowing big business to buy them off. Again, to go down and exploit the minorities, the Mexican worker, for pennies a day, all while getting around the EPA laws, wage laws, labor laws, and the union high wage demands. Remember this as you head towards the polls. This has been another End Times Prophecy News Update, audio update. Carrie Geren Scoggins. Thank you for listening.